So if you're dealing with pain after you eat, this is just about like the worst thing that can go on. Like a person ends up having to figure out, okay, do I just want to starve or do I want to deal with the pain that comes with that? Do I really feel like being balled up in the fetal position for 3 days just because I had a sandwich? So if this is you and what you eat every day causes you to have to make decisions about how you want your day to go and the discomfort that you want to have to deal with, this could really be a life-changing YouTube video for you. Maybe not as life-changing as that YouTube video where the cat chases the mailman out of the yard. That's pretty good, but still, it can be a lot of fun to find health answers that actually make sense. And in this video, when you understand the variety of issues that can create pain after eating, a lot of them are really going to make sense to you. And I know firsthand what this can be like. I had a lot of discomforts when digestive issues caused me to lose my voice for 8 years, and more than 23 doctors were not able to help me figure that out. So I got a great question from a viewer that helped me realize that I have never actually made a video on digestive pain. I was like, what are you talking about? So it was over on our video for how to increase HCl naturally that Brainwave Harmony says, "You are the most informative person I have ever listened to. Thank you for all you do. I am taking your free course. It is very helpful." Well, so far it's kind of hard to argue with anything that they're saying, really. Pain is never mentioned in all the videos. I have abdominal pain and gut pain every time I eat. I have IBS and leaky gut. Is it possible for these things to cause great pain, or do I need to look at other things? Thank you so kindly. So we actually get questions like this all the time, and in this video we kind of want to break down the digestive system and help you understand different places that pain can come from. You don't want to miss this.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So remember, I'm not a doctor and I don't know Brainwave Harmony. I don't know their situation. I couldn't possibly be giving them specific advice or anyone any type of medical advice. But in the information that you learn in this video, you can gain an understanding of how this digestive system is supposed to work, things that can go wrong that can create this pain, that can help you understand the right questions to ask your doctor so you can open up a better train of communication to help yourself find some answers here. So when we're looking at this pain situation, I've done another video on like discomfort after you eating anything, but a lot of that had to do with like nausea and oh, now I gotta hurl after I eat no matter what. So I really want to focus on just the pain aspect that can come about from different malfunctions going on with the digestive system. And most discomfort, not all, but most discomfort that happens with the digestive system after eating is going to have to do with pressure. And pressure from things like gas and fluids and things that are not flowing through the system the way that they're supposed to. And when they're not flowing or they get backed up, it can create a lot of pressure that can lead to a lot of pain. Like, think about that trick where you used to tie a string to the doorknob and to your tooth, and then you slam the door and it pulls your tooth out and everything's great. And maybe that was just Bugs Bunny cartoons, I'm not sure, but you can understand how that pressure of pushing that really fast can kind of yank that out. So think about taking your digestive tract here and tying that to the door and then slamming it. Well, that would create a lot of pain because you're taking these tissues and you're stretching it. That's going to be uncomfortable. That's going to be painful when you do that with pretty much any tissue. So when you're looking at your digestive tract, a lot of it can be like this hole here. And when there's gases in there that are expanding that, you're basically opening up this way instead of this way, but still has the ability to create a lot of discomfort, whether that's happening in the stomach or the small intestine or here in the large intestine. So a big player in this pain that can come about from digestive malfunctions has to do with gases that are going on, gases that are expanding this intestinal tract and have the ability to create a lot of pain that way. We also have problems with fluids that get blocked, that don't have the ability to flow correctly. We're going to talk about some of those. Fecal matter getting blocked, having some type of blockage here in your colon where maybe the poop's not moving through like it's supposed to. That can back things up and create a lot of pressure and a lot of pain. Food getting backed up. But we'll also go over some things like inflammation and reflux and things like that. So when we're trying to get an idea of what is causing my pain, let's just kind of break this down into some quadrants, and we'll kind of go across here and down here, and we're just going to do quadrants here. And some people will say regions, and they'll kind of break it down into 9 regions, but let's just kind of look at these different quadrants to understand why it can be so difficult to pinpoint what is actually going on in creating the pain that you're experiencing. And understand your goal with this video. That's important. Most people are not going to turn this video off and say, oh, I'm going to go take this pill and it's going to fix everything that's been going wrong with me for the last 15 years. I know that you want that to happen, but it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Do you understand? It's going to take more effort than just taking a pill for most people. Most people are going to have to do some work, and the best solution is really knowledge. If you're looking for a remedy, you're going to have a hard time and you're going to throw a lot of darts at the remedy dartboard, and a lot of them are going to make you feel worse. We really want to learn to work with our body instead of against it, and then it's a lot easier to fix the actual underlying cause of what's going wrong. So understand that this is going to take some effort for you to learn these things and figure out what's the best step for you, because the step is really going to vary from person to person. I don't have the ability to tell you what you should do in this video because I don't know what's going wrong with you. You're likely going to have to look through other videos, learn other things. I don't have the ability to explain how to fix everything that we're about to go over. This will be a 6-hour video. But in the description below this video, I'm going to list a bunch of different videos that go over these topics that we're going to talk about. I'm also going to put a link to that free digestion course that Brainwave Harmony was talking about. And you can go through that course. It's very bite-sized videos that kind of walks you through figuring out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly for you and steps you can take to improve those. And that course is totally free. So when we're looking over here in this left quadrant, and this is your left quadrant, not the one that you're looking at, but we have here like the stomach, and we have some of the pancreas going on over here, but also some of the large intestine comes up over that area as well. And over in this quadrant, this is a really important area, and this is where really the majority of the actual digestive process goes on. We'll dig into that in a second. And then down here we have some of the small intestine and some of our colon, and we have an appendix down there that can create pain for some people. And then down here over on this side we have more of the small intestine, more of the colon, and on each side we have a kidney that has the ability to have some stones that can block fluids from moving correctly, and that can create a lot of pain as well. Now here's the tricky thing. When we're looking at locations for different organs and different structures in this digestive system, it doesn't always mean that that's where the pain is going to happen. Like somebody has problems with their gallbladder, sometimes the pain can be a little bit lower down here. Sometimes it's more about a biliary duct that's being blocked, and these ducts are just like the little tubes that allow that bile to flow from the liver down to the gallbladder and then into our digestive tract. And it can be very misleading. Sometimes a gallbladder pain can be up here in your right shoulder or a little bit lower, and sometimes you could have a problem in the large intestine, but you can see that it kind of goes through all these areas. So depending on where that pain or discomfort is happening, it could really throw you off into like, what is that? What's happening there? What is that part? Now, for some situations it can be a little bit more obvious, the more insights that you gain about possible issues that that malfunction can create. So it can be important to understand that as well. But it can be a little bit misleading when we're trying to get where is this pain coming from, because some types of pain can be displaced to other regions. So to understand this better, let's dig into this quadrant just a little bit more. And this is kind of where a lot of the real digestive action is really going to take place. And what we need to understand is that the stomach makes hydrochloric acid, or HCl, whenever food comes in there. That's really what helps acidify that food so that we can break the food down and get the nutrients out of that food. It's the most important step. It's the first major step. Now there's stuff that like, oh man, there's enzymes when I got saliva and all this stuff. I understand all that. But the major first step is the acidification of that food. And it's really common for this step to be broken for a wide variety of reasons. Millions of people turn off their stomach acid on purpose on a daily basis. So this is a really common thing to see, but a person doesn't need to be taking some type of medication to have low stomach acid. There's a lot of reasons that that can come about. But once this food is acidified, it's supposed to come down here into the duodenum. And some people say duodenum, but it's more fun to say duodenum. And this is really where a lot of the important action takes place. So when this acid comes down here, it triggers something called cholecystokinin, and this kind of triggers the gallbladder to say, hey, it's time to squirt some bile down here. Now, bile is this soapy substance that's made by the liver, and then it's stored and concentrated in the gallbladder. And it helps us break down our fats. It's very important to be able to break down those fats correctly. But it also helps to neutralize the acids that leave the stomach. And then this pancreas here is also triggered by cholecystokinin, and it squirts out some enzymes that help us break down our food better, but it also squirts out this bicarb that helps neutralize these acids as well. So all of these systems kind of work together to help us really break that food down. If food is just acidified, but those acids don't get neutralized, well, now they can go through the intestinal tract and they can create some inflammation. We're going to talk about inflammation in a second, but that can be a way that causes pain. So we want all of these things working, but remember, these things are triggered by that cholecystokinin, and the cholecystokinin is triggered by stomach acid. It can also be triggered by dietary fats as well, but a lot of people are eating really low fat. They're living in the 80s and they're wearing parachute pants with their mullet, and they're still running in fear from dietary fats, when we know now that dietary fats are very beneficial. So dietary fats can help, but really it's the acidified food that's really triggering this the most. That's the biggest player there. So what goes wrong is that if that's not happening right, if the food is not being acidified, well, now the food has to break down by process of like rotting and fermenting. And that takes a lot longer, and it can create a lot more gases and toxins and just gook. You know, if you just put food in your trash can for a week and go in there and take the lid off and stick your head in there, it's not going to be pleasant. There's all this gook and all this stuff that's going wrong. Well, that can go on here when your food is not being acidified correctly. So the problem is a lot of people that are having digestive discomfort because the food is not being acidified correctly, they'll go to a doctor and the doctor's like, oh, I got a great idea. Let's just turn that stomach acid off more. And that's what a lot of doctors did with me. I was on PPIs for days turning off all this acid, but it wasn't fixing my problems because it wasn't fixing the actual underlying cause of my problems. When you can remove the small amount of acid that is left, it can reduce symptoms a little bit for some people, but you're not fixing the problem. You're not helping to actually acidify your food. So most people that have reflux are having this because there's not enough acid to trigger this LES valve to close correctly, and then the small amount of acid that they have comes back up and burns them. So when someone can increase that stomach acid, now they're acidifying the stomach enough to trigger that valve to close, and it's not going to burn them. So a lot of people will have pain in this area here, in this upper gastric area, or maybe all that feels like it's in my heart, because that reflux is coming back up in the esophagus and it's burning them. So that pain can kind of radiate to different areas when that's happening. So that's a really common pain. For me, my pain was further up. I had more of like a silent reflux situation where it was really damaging my vocal cords and my larynx, and that would create pain. I would eat certain foods and then oh man, that's the worst pain I've ever had right there. I would also have other discomforts further down the line, and I understand why now, but because when I was turning off stomach acid, I was also opening the front door so more microorganisms can come in, set up camp, and create more gases that create more pressure. That was the big deal for me. So it's really going to vary from person to person, but when we're looking at these things, this HCl is very important. The cholecystokinin then triggers the bile and the pancreatic enzymes to come out with this bicarb. So all of those things mixing together is what helps really break our food down into these smaller elemental nutrients that the body can actually utilize. So that when they move through that small intestine and into the colon, everything is a size that it's supposed to be. If it can't be broken down, guess what? It's not broken down. That's going to create a lot more trouble. So a big problem with this is a lot of the microorganisms that can alter this terrain. So we get some type of bacterial overgrowth in our stomach that comes in, and it can put out a lot of this byproduct and waste type products that can be alkaline. So it can be further alkalizing this stomach and reducing your ability to break down your food even more. Another problem is that they can create a lot of inflammation that causes things like gastritis and ulcers. And like ulcers are not caused by too much stomach acid like we thought in the 80s. We know now that they're caused by inflammation from bacteria that should not be in that stomach. So The problem is, a lot of times they get in there because there wasn't enough stomach acid. That stomach acid is like the barrier to the whole digestive tract. So when there's no acid there to fry these varmints as they come in and they set up camp and they have a cake party and it's a great time for them. So they create a lot of trouble that way. And these microorganisms can also come down here into the duodenum and they can create inflammation here and they can create a duodenal ulcer in that area as well. And that way every time after somebody eats, if they're acidifying their food at all, that acid is going to come down there and kind of go over like an open wound, really, and really create a lot of pain either in the stomach with an ulcer or in there. And it can be similar pain if somebody's having gastritis issues as well. That's just a different form of inflammation that would occur before like an open wound ulcer would show up. So that's a situation that can create pain in this area, and a lot of times it's because the small amount of acid that is there is really irritating the inflammation of those tissues. So then a person can turn off stomach acid and they'll find some relief, but they haven't actually done anything to fix the actual cause of the problem. And by turning off stomach acid, you're going to see that some of these other issues are likely to show up later on. So we take steps to kind of reduce that inflammation and maybe wipe out an overgrowth that's in the wrong place before we worry about trying to acidify a stomach correctly. If we try to acidify the stomach while there's an ulcer or gastritis type pain, then that's really going to magnify the pain. And this is what derails a lot of people when they're trying to fix digestive pain, is they're running after these remedies and they'll use something that will really magnify their discomfort. And they're like, oh man, that's not for me, I don't want to do that. And they'll run off to the next thing. But a lot of times when you're correcting some of these problems, it has the ability to magnify your symptoms a little bit. If there's an overgrowth here in the stomach or down in the small intestine, like we'll talk about in a second, when you go to kill those off, you're really going to magnify a lot of those symptoms, because a lot of the symptoms come from the waste product that these microorganisms are putting out. And when you kill them off, they kind of bust apart, and now everything that was in them comes out all at once. So it can really have the ability to magnify some symptoms when a person is taking steps that's actually moving them in the right direction. Some people feel like some of these cramping pain type issues that can happen can be from the immune system taking care of some of these overgrowth type varmints. That's why it's really important to have knowledge help you understand what's going on to walk you through the steps that are going to be helpful. Another common pain can happen usually right there in that area is a really popular place for some pain to happen, because when bile becomes too thick and sticky to flow correctly, then it's not going to come out of here and kind of help all these digestive processes to really break that food down. But even more, the gallbladder's job is to concentrate that bile. So maybe somebody doesn't have enough stomach acid to trigger this cholecystokinin. So now the gallbladder is not being told to send that bile down, and it continues to concentrate into the gallbladder until it concentrates into sludge or even into stones. And sludge or stones can block this biliary pathway. And again, when something's being blocked from flowing correctly, that pressure has the ability to create some crazy pain. And then some will have crazy pain up in this upper right quadrant area, and they'll be like, oh, well, that's happening when you're eating dietary fats because that's triggering their gallbladder, and so just don't eat any fat. So a person will go on a low-fat diet and they're like, oh, that feels better, because they're not triggering the gallbladder as much. They likely don't have enough stomach acid to trigger their gallbladder, so now the gallbladder doesn't get triggered. But are they making the situation better? No, they're making it worse. They're allowing this to concentrate longer and longer, and eventually there's going to be some stones that create such a blockage that the person's going to have their gallbladder removed. So we like to see people take steps to thin out that bile, make sure that it's thin enough to flow correctly, and then make sure that this stomach acid is working the way that it should so that it can trigger the gallbladder to flow. And that may mean that a person might need to take care of some type of overgrowth in the stomach or small intestine that's kind of alkalizing everything and not allowing it to acidify the way that it should. And the real tricky thing about figuring out what's causing this pain for me is that sometimes it's problems up here that are creating issues in other areas. Like if this bile is not flowing and things are not getting neutralized from the stomach, maybe somebody's making enough stomach acid, but now it's not getting neutralized by the bile and the bicarb leaving the pancreas because cholecystokinin is not being called on. Well, now this food's going to move through this intestinal lining. And remember, this acid is made to break down protein. Well, that's what your intestinal tract is made of. It's protein. So that's going to start like digesting your intestinal tract, and that body doesn't want that. It's going to send water here and try and rush it through the system, and maybe it gives us diarrhea that shoots us off the toilet like a rocket, or maybe it just creates inflammation in this area or somewhere in this area, and now the person is having pain somewhere down here that's actually being caused by a gallbladder that's not flowing correctly. So it can be a little bit misleading. When there's not enough stomach acid here to fry the bad guys that come in, they come in and set up camp in the stomach, but they can also come down here and start setting up camp in the small intestine, where we have a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or a SIBO issue. And now we have all this bacteria here. It could also be a fungal issue as well, but some type of microorganism here that really shouldn't be there. We shouldn't have a lot of bacteria in the stomach or the small intestine. Most of our beneficial bacteria should be going on here in our large intestine. So when they're here, they're going to create a lot more gases, and those gases are going to create a lot more pressure, and that pressure is going to cause pain. A lot of times, someone will have more pain when they're eating specific types of foods because they're having some type of sugar or some type of fiber that really gets digested by bacteria very well. So when that comes in, the bacteria is like, all right, this is great. We're going to do all this. We're going to eat all this. And in that digestive process of breaking those down can create a lot more gases. So a specific food has the ability to create a magnification of these pain symptoms if it's creating more gases and more pressure. So then the person runs in horror from that food for the rest of their life, and they feel like they fixed the problem, but they didn't actually fix the underlying cause. They're just dodging a food that seems to have the ability to magnify pain because of that underlying cause. If a person can take steps to wipe out that bacteria, then they may do okay having that food. A person could also be having like a sensitivity or an intolerance to a specific type of food if they have like a leaky gut issue, or they're not processing the food correctly. But again, these issues usually come about because of some of these other malfunctions we're talking about. And that's why dietary choices can be a big deal when we're looking at this, because when there's malfunctions, then a lot of these foods that some people do fine on create a lot of problems. A lot of these junk food fibers that are going on there. Oh, here's a keto bar. It's healthy because it's keto, but it has all these junk fibers in there and stuff that are going to create a lot of trouble. Or you have somebody who's just eating a lot of junk food, a lot of these seed oils that can create a lot of inflammation. Well, when there's already inflammation in there because of these digestive malfunctions, now these foods that are really not optimal become very problematic. To where someone who has everything working correctly, they might be able to do some seed oils and it might not create as much trouble for them in the immediate situation. So in that scenario, food choices can be very important for some people, but if they can fix the actual underlying causes of creating the trouble, then they might be able to consume some of those foods. When I really had a lot of troubles, I had like 4 foods I could eat. If I ate anything outside of those 4 foods, I was wrecked for weeks. But now I can eat those foods and I do okay with them because I fixed the underlying cause of what was creating trouble for me. So if a person's really constipated, then things are going to move through there a lot slower. That's a lot more time for all these things to accumulate, for food or fecal matters to start to accumulate and get backed up and create all this pressure that can create pain. But constipation is not like from a laxative deficiency. There's things creating that constipation. There are always underlying causes creating that constipation, and there's quite a few different things that can create that. We'll have links in the description below about constipation, but understand that it's not really the constipation that's causing that. There are other malfunctions here, and it usually has to do with someone's inability to break the food down. The food has to be broken down for it to move through the system correctly, or from some type of overgrowth that is in some place where it really shouldn't be. Those are the 2 main things. So it's a lack of stomach acid, a bile that's not flowing correctly. Maybe the pancreas is not doing these things because it's not being called on. It's possible for pancreases to have a malfunction, but in most cases those malfunctions are because the cholecystokinin is not being called on. So we have to be careful about falling into this fancy name trap. Because a lot of people, even Brainwave Harmony, is asking, okay, I have IBS and leaky gut. Is it possible for those to cause this type of pain? And a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, this makes sense, but I have gastroparesis, and that just means that all my stuff is paralyzed and it doesn't move correctly. Or, oh, I have sphincter of Oddi dysfunction, or I have ulcerative colitis, so I have a fancy name. So when there's a fancy name, my only option is to wait for science to catch up, figure out how to fix this fancy name, and then I can feel and function better. But the reality is that like IBS is not a thing. It's not something that just gets in your body. Oh, I caught IBS. IBS is a classification of symptoms that a person is experiencing, which means if it's describing a symptom, that means there has to be an underlying cause that is creating that symptom. So it's really up to us sometimes to figure out and understand what could be creating that. What malfunctions could be making those symptoms happen? So when you're trying to solve pain, it can be really helpful to understand what other symptoms or your body chemistry can be trying to tell you. Because a lot of times, this pain that we're having is actually very helpful. I know nobody wants to hear that, but this is the body's feedback mechanism. This is the body telling us, hey, some things are going wrong here. We really need to turn this around. And until we turn it around, I'm going to keep sending you this signal, letting you know that it's really not fixed yet. So a lot of times this pain is just giving us insights, and we need to learn how to understand that pain a little bit. So there's signs of low stomach acid and that bile is not flowing correctly. We'll put links in the description below for our videos on 10 signs of low stomach acid and 10 signs of poor bile flow. And when you get an idea of like, wow, I have a lot of signs that show that my stomach acid may be low, maybe taking steps to improve that could at least help my digestive process work better. And maybe that starts to put you towards the road of improving some situations. As long as you understand that they have the ability to create some magnification in symptoms, if you start to take steps that you really don't understand what you're doing. That's why knowledge can be the biggest factor when we're trying to correct an underlying cause in the body. If someone just has a small amount of stomach acid and is creating reflux and they put a little bit of stomach acid in there, well now they've increased the amount of acid, but it's not yet enough to trigger this valve to close, so they just magnified their reflux symptoms. And they're going to be like, well, that's done for me, I ain't doing that again. But they just need to understand that they might need to wipe out a bacterial overgrowth, they might need to increase that stomach acid enough to trigger that valve to close, and then the reflux would stop. So it's really about educating yourself to understand how to walk through the process of improving some of these digestive malfunctions. And for a lot of folks, they're going to have layers of trouble. I had a variety of things that were going wrong, and people are going to have to do more than one thing. And that's why just taking some remedy, oh, I took this, it didn't fix everything that's been going wrong for 20 years, so that must not be it. Well, sometimes you need to fix other areas as well. So there can be layers that need to be improved to really correct the whole situation. So now that you understand that the wide variety of things that can create pain, that can show up after eating, that doesn't mean that you're done. That doesn't mean that, all right, I understand it, I nailed it. Now the work really starts. Now you have to figure out what's going on with you and your body. So if there are digestive symptoms that you're dealing with, especially if I didn't talk about them here, just go to our channel, click on the videos tab, and then there's a little search circle thing there that allows you to search for any keyword, and you'll find our video very likely on that topic. If we don't have a video on that topic, put in the comment below this video, hey, can you cover this topic? And we'll add that to our list that we're working on creating now. But there is more to learn. So look at the description below for the different topics of videos, that find the ones that are going to be most helpful for you. You can get that free digestion course that's going to start walking you through that process. And if you'd rather just watch a video, our full digestive reset video, like this is an in-depth, over an hour video that kind of walks you through a lot of this understanding of what may be going wrong and steps you can take to improve that. So you can jump over right now and check out that full digestive reset video, or in the description below you can find a topic that's more pinpointed for the symptoms that you're dealing with. Either way, there's some work to do. I can't wait to hear about your results.